And let me start by welcoming all of you to this digital platform that we unfortunately are getting more used to than we wanted. And therefore, I share the wish that we once, somewhere in the future, might meet in a physical way again. Such a physical meeting was possible in Glasgow. And I want to start with that because that's basically the main takeaway and a new starting point for where Europe is going. Or you could actually better say a new confirmation of where Europe is going. Our aim for Glasgow was pretty simple. Convince the rest of the world to embark on the same journey towards climate neutrality as Europe has already set out since a few years. Europe has done more than just setting out that journey. It has legislated that journey in a climate law, and it now has put forward a set of proposals to make that journey happen via a minus 55 goal in 2030 towards full climate neutrality in 2050. But the 9% of European emissions, even if reduced completely to zero, will not save planet Earth if the rest of the world doesn't do a similar or actually the same ambition. And that's what we worked on. To be honest, not in Glasgow, but mainly in the run-up to Glasgow, which was a 2-year run-up because due to COVID, COP26 took 1 year, occurred 1 year later than originally planned. And that was a year well spent. It was a year in which the American public decided that somebody else should be in the White House, which is a difference between night and day if you talk about climate change, and I guess also on a few other subjects, but that's not part of this conference. But also a year in which China finally came forward, joining the climate ambition of the rest of the world. The jury is still out there whether the way China joins is enough, and the ambitions they have set out for themselves are strong enough. But to be fair, they've come a long way. This will only be sustainable into the future if we solidify this into international agreements, and hence that was the reason why Glasgow had to happen. The new Glasgow Climate Pact now takes us one step further into that worldwide framework towards climate neutrality. We're not there yet, but we have laid some very important bedrocks, stepping stones towards 2050. And those are obviously, first of all, ambition. So when we went into Glasgow only a year ago, we were dead set for a world that would warm up way more than 2 degrees. Even 3 degrees was actually the most realistic endpoint if you added all the ambitions of the rest of the world, which is a devastating warming of our planet. Now, coming out of Glasgow, we can say that we are somewhat around 2 degrees, 1.9 in the calculations of some, 2.2 in the calculations of others, but we are underway. We're not there yet, though. So next year, Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, will be crucially important to deliver the remainder of the ambitions that need to be part of this. Argentina, Mexico, and yes, India, China, and maybe even the EU. We haven't excluded ramping up our ambition. Actually, we have included in the climate law that we would let science decide where we need to go. So that's the ambition. Ambition will, however, not happen without finance. The UNFCCC treaty is not just about environment, it's also about solidarity, sharing our wealth. And therefore, we agreed to ramp up our financial commitments beyond the 100 billion that was promised 10 years ago, and by the way, not delivered, which is something to think about. But for the longer term, we will deliver on that 100 billion and more in the future. And it's also about the rules of the game, because if everybody commits to reducing CO2 emissions, it's important how to count CO2 emissions. That might sound like a very technical exercise, and it is, but in the end, it's also politics. Luckily, Glasgow was able to agree on the rules of the game after 6 years of negotiations. So that's an accomplishment in itself. And it was able to agree on a financial commitment and on ambition. So actually, it was, in my view, a much bigger success than much of the media reported on. And I don't blame anybody for that. It's a complicated process, and you hardly know what to look at. So all media went to go for one sentence in the final conclusions, which might be iconic, symbolic, and also actually indeed a very good example of that we are getting there, but are not there yet. So you could summarize the whole result in that one sentence about phasing out or phasing down coal-fired power. So what does this mean, Glasgow, for Fit for 55? It actually means, in very simple terms, that we can go on. I'm sure, as I said, that if Glasgow would have been an utter failure in Europe, people would have started the discussion about our 9% of the emissions and why the hell are we doing this if the rest of the world is not doing anything else, is not doing anything on this. But that didn't happen. So we can go on with increased vigor and assertiveness to get Fit for 55, the package of legislation, over the line. And that includes a lot of things that will affect you and your sector. The ETS from minus, I think it was 51% compared to 2005 to minus 63, because that's the new goal of the new ETS, or actually the old ETS and its new ambition. But not only that, also the Renewable Energy Directive talks much more prominently about renewable heating and cooling. The renovation wave talks much more about using district heating, which is obviously an important part of your sector. The energy efficiency regulations, of which you are an example, you could say a bedrock example of increasing energy efficiency. It will all affect you and us and everybody in Europe, but I'm convinced we can make it. If we combine the ambition of the Fit for 55 package with the opportunities that we have, thanks, for instance, to the COVID, the recovery and resilience facility, the 750 billion. If you combine the obligation of Fit for 55 with the opportunities of that amount of investment capital that will land into Europe in the next few years only, we have an incredible chance of accelerating into the future. Don't miss that opportunity. Be vigilant, be alert, be part of the conversation, and be part of the solution. I thank you for your attention. I'm available for questions if there's a possibility to ask them, and I wish you a very good conference.